want to check with her, or whatever you advise is fine.
I think we can proceed.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. I hereby call to order the Oregon Government Ethics Commission meeting on March 7, 2025. Because it is 9 a.m., this is our second meeting of the year. Our Executive Director, Susan Myers, is in the Salem office along with investigators, trainers, and administrative staff. Our Department of Justice Counsel, Dan Gilbert, is also in the Salem office. His colleague may be online, Sean Brady, for all I know. Hi, Sean. Also, if there are visitors online for this meeting, I would welcome you to this meeting via online. As for commissioners, my name is Dave Fiscum, and I am currently chair of the commission. This time I will chair using Microsoft Teams with help from all of those in the Salem office, especially Ruth Sylvester, who will handle our contact list in the public and executive sessions. Vice Chair Shanoa Payne is online, I believe. Commissioner Dan Mason is online. Commissioner Lisa McCauley is in the Salem office. Commissioner Rick Burke is online. Commissioner Jonathan Thompson is in the Salem office. Commissioner Yvonne Resendez Gutierrez is online. And I understand that our new commissioner, Ann Medler, may join us at some point. She was able to attend our Saturday seminar on the public meetings law, and it was good to meet her online. She may not be able to join us today, and we'll look forward to meeting her along the way if today doesn't work. With Commissioner Medler's appointment, we now have 8 commission slots filled, leaving only 1 vacancy. The attendance roster I've outlined today yields a quorum, so we will proceed first through a few items on the public session agenda and then turn to the executive session. 4 items as they appear on your public session agenda. We'll proceed through those, and then we'll hold the consent calendar items on the public session agenda when we reconvene the public session after the executive session. The first item on the public session agenda allows the chair to make comments if he or she chooses to do so, and I'll make only a few this morning. First, based on the presentation our executive director and key staff made on February 10 to the Joint Ways and Means General Government Subcommittee at the Capitol, the Ethics Commission workload is clearly expanding, and no doubt you know this, if only by the size of the written documents you received in advance of this meeting. Of course, the staff has a bird's eye view of the increase because they handle it every day. I hope you were able to read a copy of Director Myers' presentation to Ways and Means, and you can note the substantial increases in ethics cases, in training schedules, in public meetings law issues. I would say that Becky Mason deserves great credit for turning the presentation into a very solid PowerPoint that you received early this week. And that document helped the staff to report on matters in an organized fashion. I want to recognize the work done by the staff in accommodating, at least so far, this increased workload, and to compliment the staff for a job well done. Further, Becky Mason and Stephanie Hefner joined Director Myers at the witness table in Ways and Means, and both did an excellent job with supporting comments. And I say this because I was able to watch the entire public hearing online, though for what it's worth, Teams did not allow me to speak, which is probably for the good. Director Myers will have more to say about Ways and Means during her remarks to us. No, it was a public hearing, not a work session, but I think it represented for us a solid start on gaining approval of our biennial budget, which is Senate Bill 5522. I would also ask Director Myers, when she makes her report, just to focus briefly on the explanations of the 5 bills Governor Kotek has authorized to be introduced for us this session. We need to understand those bills, at least to a degree, as some of them might head toward public hearings and possible work sessions. The Capitol. Next, special kudo to Stephanie Hefner for making such a solid presentation to us last Saturday on the public meetings law responsibilities, which are new to us. You can see that by today's agenda, if not otherwise. Let me turn now to the second item on the public session agenda after my remarks, the new addition that allows any commissioner who chooses to make a comment on matters not on our formal agenda to make that comment. Any takers for that opportunity? And I'll pause for a moment in case there are some.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to comment because I think that as our agenda keeps growing with these public meetings, law violations, I do know that we have historically handled these on an individual basis, but I don't know if there may be a way to consider when we have, 10 individuals with the same violation, if there may be a way to consider those. I know we aren't doing them on a consent calendar, but if there may be a way to consider doing those together to help manage our agenda in the future. I do have concerns that as our agenda grows and becomes more cumbersome, then it may be a deterrence for volunteers to serve on this commission. And the more we can sort of streamline this, I think the better for our commissioners and for the public and for everyone involved. So I just don't know if that would take a legislative change or just a change in process. But I think that's something we need to consider as this sort of new thing has come together, and as we are now dealing with just more belaborsome and cumbersome sort of agenda. That's just my comment.
Vice Chair, thank you for the comment. I would want to join with you in that hope, and I will turn briefly to Director Myers, at least, if not others. Do you have any reaction to that, Director?
That was one of the topics I have on the list for this work session that is next on the agenda.
Good. We'll hold off that on that just for a moment. Thank you, Vice Chair. Good comment. Anybody else have a comment to make before we move on? Hearing and seeing none, the third item on our public session agenda is, as just implied, if not stated by our director, a quote work session, unquote, where Director Myers has some issues for us to consider. So, Director Myers, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Fitson. So, for commissioners, we have added this work session to allow and encourage sort of a discussion of issues that have been raised both by staff and by commissioners, sometimes in the context of individual cases in the past, but that I think are deserving of a full discussion by the commission. So I have 5 of them. And so the first one is, as I believe raised by Commissioner Burke at the last meeting, was how does the commission want to handle what it
Perfect, thank you. Yep, that's the proper channel.
Quote unquote technical violations. So in this meeting book, in prior meeting books, there are, especially with public meetings law cases, but even with ethics cases, there are cases where the violation seems less, it may seem less significant. It may seem this is a simple violation that has already been fixed, like an SCI filing violation or a public meetings law violation, in terms of when a notice got posted or, where it got posted, all the little technical details. And I do understand that the commission, we have these very lengthy meeting books. The one thing I would say, and it was what Ron always said, which is, well, I'd say 2 things. One, almost all of the violations are in fact technical violations. all of our laws are kind of these little nuanced sort of laws where there may not be intent. There is no mens rea. It's not like we are trying to prove someone's intentionally violating the law. The other thing, and what Ron always said, is it is important to create a record. And so, in terms of like the penalty matrix, if you have someone who's had a violation, that is a consideration. So if they keep making the same mistakes, whatever they are, failing to disclose a conflict, discussing unauthorized matters in an executive session, having a record, one, puts them on notice, like you're not being let off the hook. You made a violation. You're still only going to get a letter of education. But it creates the record both to let the public know that we did recognize something as a violation, and so that if it happens again and again, the penalties that they would be subject to would increase. So that's topic number one. Any thoughts, comments from commissioners, questions? Dan Mason has a question. Dan.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I wasn't here for the discussion. My apologies. I was traveling at that last meeting. But I mean, the whole concept of having the commission is to flush out whether there's a technical violation, out of whether it's accidental actions or on purpose. And it takes, sometimes there's a lengthy discussion about that. But I think if you circumvent that process of flushing it out, then you do prevent creating an accurate record for future violations for that public official. And I think it's, just because it's a technical violation doesn't mean that you should just waive the violation or circumvent the process. So I think that's a little bit of a slippery slope. I think it would be interesting to see if, as the meeting books grow, if we end up in a situation where, you just have to do meetings once a month instead of once every 6 weeks, or you have to adjust the timeframes, which probably isn't ideal for like what Vice Chair Payne said about attracting new volunteers for these positions. But that may just be out of necessity based on the scope of the commission's work over time. Because it was way different 8 years ago when I got him, I got on the commission, and it's changed a lot just in the last 2 to 3 years. So I'm sure that the 6-week meeting, process of scheduling may have to just be adjusted down versus changing how we view technical violations and such. My 2 cents.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thanks. I hear what Commissioner Mason is saying. I hear what you're saying, technical violations, because you're right, they are. I'm more concerned with especially when it comes to public meeting law violations, did the public body take steps to correct the issue? I mean, if they took steps to correct the issue and they're aware of it, I think that's what we should focus on, is fixing the issue, not necessarily penalizing people. But my question is, would there be a way to update the penalty matrix to take into account more than just if we issued a letter of education last time? Is there, and I don't know what it would be. I have no idea, but would there be a way to update the penalty matrix to take into account, this is their 3rd public meetings law violation. They fixed them all, but this is still their 3rd public meetings law violation without, and I don't know the answer.
Well, right now the matrix, there are 2 things on the matrix that could be applicable. One, there is on the matrix, as you know, pointer, you get points added for number of violations, etc. And then there are deductions for things like, were you acting on the advice of counsel or policy? There is a deduction for has the person taken efforts to fix? Have they asked for training or obtained training and done efforts to mitigate? So they do get points deducted for that. There are also points added for, have there been prior violations?
Thank you.
The other thing I would say is, because I do appreciate that as much as these are all technical violations, as staff, when we write the reports and make the recommendations, which of course are reviewed by DOJ, but as I've said previously, we are not in the position to be making the decisions on these cases. That is the commission's role. We're simply going to make a recommendation, which generally is going to be a conservative recommendation based on the language of the statute. It is always up to the commission if it feels that the circumstances warrant moving something to investigation or not.
Commissioner Mason, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, one last point. You nullify the concept of a commission, by just defaulting, back to, the staff recommendation. I mean, why even have a commission? If you don't have a body that's analyzing the facts and making a different decision. So I do think that the current process, though it's stretching out, the meeting books, is the way to go. And I think, you don't want to, despite the fact that, the new public meetings laws are creating more technical violations, I think it's probably what the issue is. Doesn't mean that you want to, like I said, nullify having an actual body making these decisions and creating a record for these public officials. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director, just a quick comment and two things. First of all, I think we need to think about how you want us to respond to these issues you either are just started to lay out. We can do so today because we're in a public meeting, and that's fine. Beyond today, I would be inclined to do something that might be a problem, which is to respond by email to these issues, which I think are very genuine for all of us. The risk of responding, the risk of responding by email is that inadvertently, unintentionally, without intent, I might be creating a serial public meeting.
Yes, we would prefer you not to do that.
I understand that.
If you have additional thoughts or comments after the meeting that you want the commission to consider, you can email them to me and we can bring it up at a future work session. I don't expect there to be a definitive answer on any of the topics I have for the work session, more of simply providing a forum for the commission to start talking through the topics.
Thank you. And what I would say that if individuals choose to respond in some way to you, that avoids, I would submit, subject to Mr. Gilbert and Mr. Brady's concurrence, that we would avoid a serial public meeting. We're communicating with you, our executive. Thank you.
That is correct. I would not be acting as an intermediary. I will not be forwarding anyone's email to the rest of the commission.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So the second topic that I had for the work session is something that has come up not necessarily recently, but has repeatedly been raised over the last couple of years. And that is the role of the complainant and the extent to which the commission should consider complainant information. So, as I said, periodically this comes up because the complainant is listed on the caption and the complainant is identified usually at the beginning who filed the complaint in the reports, and then the information from the complaint. I want to stress the complainant is not a party to the case. And I don't necessarily want to make them a party to the case. They have no appeal rights. They have no standing in this case, any case, because it's not the complainant versus the respondent. It is the complainant has provided information to the commission that the commission has opened a case. It's the commission versus the respondent. And the concerns, of course, are why someone chose to file a complaint for the most part. And I recognize there may be times when the reason someone filed could be political, could be retaliation, could be all sorts of things. But in the long run, it really shouldn't be relevant because all we're trying to get at is, here's the complaint. We're trying to find out what happened from the respondent, from the complainant, from the minutes, whatever it is, and then evaluate whether that may or may not have violated the law. So when there is a lot of focus on who the complainant is and why they may have filed, I think it would help the commission to sort of consider whether that is relevant to the facts before the commission in any particular case. Given that the complainant is not a party, all we're trying to do is figure out, does this respondent violate this law based on this set of facts?
Vice Chair Payne, please.
Sorry, I just muted myself when I was trying to unmute. Yes, thank you, Director. I think this is a really good point because I do think sometimes we ask who the complainant is or why they're filing the complaint. And I think sometimes it's obvious from the amount of complaints that are being filed that there is a reason why the complaints are being filed. But I do agree with you that I think as public officials that you are under a microscope and your actions are going to be watched. And so it is that much more imperative that you do things correctly and you follow the letter of the law. And it is not our job to determine the political motivations of the complaints, why they were filed, the so-called sort of drama behind the scenes of some of these like small towns or what is going on, because really our job, like you said, is just to determine whether there's a violation. And the motivation behind the complaints, I think, really gets us into murky waters. And there's always going to be sort of drama in a lot of these, smaller towns, and there's always going to be political motivation behind some of these complaints. But I think it would do us well to stay out of that and to simply stick to the letter of the law and whether a violation has been filed or not. It's unfortunate that our commission could be used as a political tool. However, we can't not find that there is a violation simply because somebody is motivated to file a complaint with our commission, as a political tool. I think that would also be unfortunate. So I think we just have to treat everyone the same, no matter what. And so I think we should stay away from that personally.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other comments, colleagues?
Commissioner Mason?
Oh, pardon me. I just see your hand.
Yep.
Commissioner Mason,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you,
Your
Chair.
turn.
No, thank you. I think it's one thing for us to specifically ask about the complainant, but when the respondent is bringing up some of the history of the complainant, that creates a different dynamic and does give you more color. And I've seen through the years a variety of those that actually can play into the determining factor whether some of the motive. Now, I do totally agree with Commissioner Payne saying that we should stay away from those. But I think that when the respondent brings up some of that background, if they do have a history with the complainant, you have to address that or weigh that into your decision. So I don't think it's just as black and white as it might come across in our conversation today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good comments. I don't have a comment here other than to say this, and I'm not sure this is a compromise or just a notion from me, but sometimes I would like to have more than just the name of the person who files a complaint. if only a sentence as to who this person is and where this person lives, that kind of stuff. Even though I recognize fully the director's comment that this person does not, the complainant does not have any quote standing unquote. But that may not be worth it either, because I think I agree with Vice Chair Payne that our focus is there a potential violation of law here? What do we do about it? Other comments, colleagues? Director, please proceed.
I would just, in response to Commissioner Mason's statement, we do endeavor when we present what information was in the complaint, what information is in the response. If a respondent includes, as you've noted, statements about why they think this complaint was filed or what is going on in this jurisdiction that may have led to this complaint, we do endeavor to always include that as part of their response. Even regardless of whether we think it's relevant, it is important that the respondent have the opportunity to present their understanding of the case to the commission.
Thank you, Director. Seeing no other hands at the moment, we haven't resolved this issue 100%, but please proceed to the next part of your work session, please.
Yes, item number 3 is a follow-up to Commissioner Payne's question that was raised in the training on last Saturday. So, Commissioner Payne, I attempted to answer it, but I think I was very tired at the time, and I don't think my answer may have made sense. So the question raised was, the commission is in exec session to consider preliminary reviews. And during that exec session, they do ask questions of our legal counsel who is present. Now, how does that work? Because our advice has always been, when you go into exec session under F to get legal advice, confidential attorney-client privileged advice, we always tell groups there should be a written memo from the attorney in order for it to qualify under the F exception. But of course, when our attorney's in the room here, if we go into exec session and you have a question on one of these cases, he has no legal memo for you. It's not there. My explanation, what I was trying to explain is, it's the reason that you're holding the executive session. We go in under 2F and 244, 264D to consider the preliminary reviews. It's the consideration of the preliminary review, which is the purpose of holding this exec session. And the discussion in the exec session relates solely to those preliminary reviews, whether it is a question asked of staff, of me, or of our DOJ counsel. That question, that discussion is about the preliminary review. However, if we were to hold an executive session to get legal advice on something unrelated to a preliminary review, say we wanted legal advice from our DOJ counsel on whether we could make certain changes to the statutes to make our meeting books shorter. That legal advice, if we're holding it under subsection 2F to get that legal advice, then yes, our DOJ counsel would have to have a written memo. That make more sense this time?
Vice Chair Payne, please.
So just to confirm, it is your understanding that it is okay to ask our legal counsel questions during the meeting about the preliminary review packet before us
Yes.
in an executive session, but
Yes.
not about general processes or procedures about how we do things.
Correct. Because of course, we really shouldn't have those discussions in exec session anyway, because I'm not sure they would qualify. But yes, if we're in an exec session to consider preliminary reviews or own motions, the discussion can include questions of anyone who is present.
Thank you, Director. Any other comments on this issue? I appreciate Vice Chair Payne raising it Saturday. It was an interesting question that needed to be resolved. Thank you for steps you've taken to do that. Any other comments on that issue before we head into item number 4? Seeing and hearing none, Director, please proceed.
This is Sean Brady. I would just add there is some
thank you.
nuance there. The exemption is information and records exempt. Information would include the giving of legal advice. And so long as we notice the meeting as including legal advice, and we can discuss legal advice in executive session, so long as we notice it properly.
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Appreciate it. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you, but thank you for your comment. That's helpful. Anything else before we proceed? Hearing and seeing none for the moment. Director, please, number 4.
I'm going to combine item 4 and 5 because
Please.
they relate to each other. So item 4, I wrote down as commission meeting issues, meeting length, size of the book. Are there any opportunities for streamlining? And then and something I think has already been mentioned, should we move to all-day meetings, 2-day meetings, more frequent meetings, having them monthly? All of these things to be considered as ways to avoid reading books like what is in front of me. And those would include trying to work with all of our investigators, perhaps see if we can shorten our reports a little bit. Don't want to leave anything important out, but sometimes we can be a little wordy. I've never been accused of not being wordy. So all of those sort of things. And then item 5 I have was future legislative fixes, which is, are there changes the commission would like to see made to the laws in our jurisdiction or to the commission's process in general? Like, I would certainly, I have been having discussions with the associations, OSBA, LOC, et cetera, and with attorneys for various public entities, that would be, at some point after legislative session, I think it would be helpful to assemble a task force to actually work on the public meetings, because that was not part of House Bill 2805. Should we have jurisdiction over the public body rather than the individual governing body members, and make the public body responsible for things like the meeting notice and minutes and some of the more technical topics? And I think there are people who would like to see more substantive changes, maybe envision how we would like to see the public meeting law operate. In terms of commission process, that could include considering, and this is a topic Chair Fiscom has brought up previously in, I think, ethics cases, but considering options like changing the process so that should we have an option for issuing a letter of ed in lieu of a preliminary review report for certain types of cases? I don't know. So I wanted to kind of lay that out there and see if the commission had any thoughts on ideas, both for streamlining, thoughts on having more frequent or longer meetings, and then invite the commission, as always, to forward any suggestions that changes they'd like.
Thank you, Director. I'll turn to Commissioner Mason in a moment. All I would say is that thank you for those comments. This links up with something I said at our first meeting, which is that in any organization, there's always room for improvement. Without being negative about what you're doing, there's ways to improve it. I have a couple suggestions on the legislative side. I will hold those and send you a note, Director, but others may have other suggestions, and please feel free to suggest those things now or later. Commissioner Mason, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I know I mentioned the comment earlier. I think it's probably completely necessary to go with more frequency of meetings. And I know you're not going to be able to do that until the 2026 calendar. Maybe you do it sooner, but I mean, with the amount of oversight the commission has. I don't think it's unrealistic to have the staff or volunteers to try to cram that much into, one meeting every 6 weeks. I think it's smarter to go with shorter meetings, once a month, if that's even possible, but that might not even be likely. It is a challenge though. I can see where the staff would be pressed. And I think most of the boards and commissions that I've ever been on, monthly meetings is reasonable. And this was every 6 weeks was always the kind of exception, with this board. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, any comments?
Commissioner Burke added, I would be in favor of more frequent meetings to the chat.
Yes, I did see that on the chat. Thank you for that. The only thing I would quickly say in response to Commissioner Mason and others is that if moved to monthly meetings, which I'm not opposed to, that there might be a unrelated effect on changing our cycles, on changing the clocks that exist statutorily for various of our processes, but we can deal with that in detail later. Any other comments, colleagues? Director, any concluding remarks?
Commissioner Thompson.
Oh, I see your hand. You need to.
I don't have a
raise your
fancy little hand to put on the screen like Commissioner Mason did. So
No, go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
I just would like to second, third, or fourth. I would prefer more frequent meetings rather than longer meetings because eventually your brain goes to mush and it gets a little, especially with the ability to join them remotely online. I think that flexibility is wonderful and would lend itself to, you couldn't be here, be online either. So.
And my closing remark on this, we're fine. So when we were putting together the meeting agenda, and I will be upfront with you all about this, your meeting book could have been over 100 pages longer. There were some additional preliminary reviews that had been completed and signed and were waiting to go in that because it's a beast of a book, said, let's move those to the April meeting if we're allowed by set. It's not violating anything. And we communicated with the people and all of that was fine. But yes, having a more frequent meeting may mitigate so that the length of each meeting book could be shorter. We can work with staff. I can work with Becky and Stephanie and Casey on figuring out how to accomplish that in light of any necessary deadlines. So if the commission is so inclined, I can work on what a change schedule would mean in terms of the rest of this year. And as we develop the calendar, which will come before you in June for the 26 year, we can incorporate those monthly meetings at that point.
Thank you, Director. Any final questions for the Director before we move on with one more public meeting agenda item and then move forward? Colleagues? Okay, the last item on the public session agenda that we will handle this morning at this moment deals with the minutes of the last meeting on January 24th. Any comments on those minutes as they were distributed to you? And if none, I'll accept a motion to accept them as distributed because we now do take a formal roll call vote on the minutes. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I move to approve the minutes of the January 24th, 2025 Commission meeting.
Thank you. Administrator, please call the roll.
Commissioner Mason.
Aye.
Commissioner McCauley.
Aye.
Commissioner Burke.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Payne.
Aye.
Commissioner Resendez Gutierrez.
Aye.
Chair Fiscom.
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you, colleagues. Director, others, any last comments before we head into executive session?
No,
Hearing
we can
and seeing none, I am now going to read a script that specifies. Oh, pardon me, Commissioner Thompson, please. I forgot that I was going to call on you for your comment.
I've just been advised by our executive director that I should make it after you read your announcement. So.
Oh, fair enough. Thank you very much. I'll read the script, which is a very good one, to creating specifying our authority. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission will now meet in executive session to consider preliminary reviews. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. When we enter the executive session, all other members of the audience will be asked to leave the room. Everyone currently joining the meeting online and over the phone, other than representatives of the news media, will be removed from the meeting. If your case is being heard in executive session, you will need to rejoin the meeting, where you will be held in the virtual waiting room until the commission is ready to hear your case. Our staff will text you on the number you provided them to let you know when we are about to hear your case. The executive session is being held under ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub F and ORS 244.260 sub 4 and ORS 192.685 sub 1 to conduct preliminary reviews of ethics and public meetings law complaints. In accord with state law, representatives of the news media are specifically directed that after the commission has made its final determinations and adjourned at the executive session, they may report on the preliminary review cases agenda items 33 through 89, including the commission's deliberations and its final determinations. ORS 244.260 sub 4 sub D sub capital C authorizes the commission to deliberate and make its final determinations on preliminary reviews in executive session. Following the conclusion of the meeting, the commission will publicly disclose and post the audio and video recordings of the preliminary review executive session. Once the executive session is concluded, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. Finally, if any of the commissioners have conflicts of interest related to any of the agenda items being heard in executive session, the time is now to make your conflict of interest disclosures before we enter executive sessions. To that end, Commissioner Thompson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I have no conflict of interest, I will be abstaining from voting on executive session items 33, 34, 45, 47, 52, and 56 due to the fact that I have professional relationships with both respondents.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for the precision of those comments. We all appreciate it. I do. Okay, staff, make provisions for the executive session.
Wait. Sorry, Chair Fiskam, I also have a disclosure on.
Oh, please.
Yeah, my
Please,
apologies.
Please proceed, Commissioner. I failed to recognize you, saw your hand too late. Please proceed.
Yeah. Yes, this is Commissioner Iván Reséndiz Gutiérrez. I need to abstain from taking action on items number 78 and 79 of the reports of preliminary review regarding the Clatsop County School District number 30, I think also known as the Warrenton School District, because my law firm does work with Clatsop County School District.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry, I failed to recognize you. Any other comments, colleagues, commissioners, before we authorize staff to begin the executive session, both at the Salem office as well as online? And I'll wait for the information that we're ready to proceed to executive session. I have a couple more remarks about our schedule during executive session, but I'll wait till we are ready to go online and in the room.
Chair Fiskam, we do have one representative from the media online. I'm going to ask them to identify themselves now.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi, this is Miranda Sear with the Register Guard newspaper in Eugene.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Any others, Director Hefner?
Not that I am aware of. We're working on clearing the room now. Fiscum, just give us one moment.
Absolutely. Thank you.